equal rights, opportunities, as well as status for all. History too will record this year as a milestone for global cooperation. We affirm the historic nature not only of the first summit of the G20 to take place on African soil, but also of this social summit, a gathering of the peoples from across the world. You are making history. The initial history was made in Brazil when President Lula convened a social summit of the G20. But you are making history because this is the very first time that a social summit of the G20 is being held on African soil, and you can applaud yourself. Your summit is taking place at a time of great uncertainty around the world. Political polarization, global poverty, conflict and war, and the growing impact of climate change are threatening global development. Inequality in wealth distribution, imbalances in international development finance, and in disparities in access to financial resources are holding back our ability to meet the aspirations of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. As a continent, we are in tandem, striving to realize the aspirations of the African Union's Agenda 2063 to develop the Africa that we want. This is the second G20 Social Summit to take place since the concept was inaugurated by President Lula of Brazil. The breadth of representation and the depth of engagement is most impressive. I am told that there have been more than 100 meetings that you have been involved in engaging together. It is here in this room where we lay the groundwork for global action on the G20 priorities. We know that global action will be credible because it is informed by the voices of the people. South Africa's G20 presidency has been premised on ensuring the interests of developing economy countries that they must be elevated on the G20 agenda. We have sought to address poverty, inequality, and underdevelopment. Having taken the leaf from the focus that Brazil put on these issues, we decided too that we want to elevate these issues to a much higher level. We have worked to strengthen and to reform the international financial architecture, to democratize the systems of global governance, and to promote the right of all nations to development, to equality and dignity, and leaving no one behind. We have used our G20 presidency to reiterate the call for the world's leading economies to invest in sustainable development and in the conservation of the planet for future generations. We wish to congratulate Brazil for having hosted COP30, which is still going on, but also congratulate President Lula for having insisted that the rainforests, the tropical forests, must be protected. But for the decisions taken at the upcoming G20 Leader Summit to stand tall, to grow, to have credibility and legitimacy, they have to be nourished by strong roots. These roots are our civil society and community organizations, women's organizations, youth formations, academia, think tanks, business, labor, and grassroots formations that focus on, yes, gender issues, like the LGBTIQ community, like the disabled communities, like the unemployed people. They must therefore be rooted amongst those communities. We are fortunate to have secured the full and meaningful participation of all the formations in this summit, including, and by no means am I going to count them all, including the Women 20, the Youth 20, the Business 20, the Civil 20, the Labor 20, the Parliament 20, the Media 20, the Disability 20. Now you will have to tell me which one is left, because there are so many. Yes, U20 as well. So there's been a broad and far-reaching consultation over the last year. Now all these 20s have come together, and this is what strengthens your summit, because we should not only focus on the Leaders Summit, which will be starting day after tomorrow. We should be focusing on the people. And let me say that, you know, when the Leaders Summit meets, they meet like in a boardroom. Now your setting here is much more beautiful. So you are better than the Leaders Summit that I am going to be chairing. So you can congratulate yourselves. There have been dialogues on issues as diverse as digital inclusion, equitable transformation, and climate justice. There have been discussions on just and sustainable finance, on media freedom, on strengthening democracy, and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Delegates to this summit have recognized the need to build resilience and inclusive value chains to protect vulnerable countries from increased volatility, particularly in global trade. The Social Summit has reaffirmed the importance of an inclusive transition to a low-carbon, climate-resilience economy that is guided by those most affected. Delegates are calling on the G20 Leaders Summit to demonstrate leadership in scaling up global water investment for the benefit of all. The G20 Social Summit has sought to ensure that global leadership protects society's most vulnerable. Today is World Children's Day, when we commemorate the adoption of the Convention of the Rights of the Child. This was the first global UN convention ratified by the newly democratic South Africa. This social summit has called for more resources to be devoted to eliminating child poverty and hunger, and to ensure that children are protected. Our own government, having realized that in some parts of our own country there are challenges about child hunger, is going to be doing something quite significant to address the issue of hunger and poverty amongst vulnerable societies. We are going to be focusing on that. Progressive deliberations at this summit have culminated in the calls for greater political commitment to advancing young people's access to opportunities. It has called for the health and well-being of women and children to be prioritized and for greater representation of women in all facets of society. Gone should be the days when women are relegated to the back of everything that happens in society. We should actually be saying, this is the century of women. Women must take their rightful place in playing a key role in the affairs of the world. As South Africa, we have lent our support to the Global Leaders Network for Women's, Children's, and Adolescents' Health. As the Global Leaders Network, we are deeply concerned by the effects of the withdrawal of overseas development assistance on initiatives supporting health services, delivery, and health systems in many parts of the world. We are committed to work together to mobilize global health financing so that the most vulnerable are not further deprived of their rights to care. It was the great African revolutionary Thomas Sankara who said that there is no true social revolution without the liberation of women. And he said, he continued to say, may my eyes never see and may my feet never take me to a society where half the people are held in silence. We cannot build societies rooted in equality unless those societies uphold the rights of women and girls. Sustainable societies are those that recognize, that value, and also compensate the labor and economic contribution of women. No society can thrive for as long as gender-based violence and femicide continues to be the agency of women that is denied. The violence perpetrated by men against women in many countries around the world erodes the social fabric of nations. It imposes a heavy burden that constrains development and weakens inclusive growth. Men and boys are critical partners in transforming harmful norms and advancing gender justice. They must be actively involved in challenging inherited attitudes, power imbalances, and social structures that normalize violence and silence survivors. Here in South Africa, we do have a challenge of gender-based violence, and the women of our country are crying out that they need much more focus on the issue of gender-based violence. They need protection, they need support, and they need assistance, largely from their government, as well as from the men of South Africa. And it is for this reason that we've said, we, in recognizing the plight of our women, we're now going to classify gender-based violence and femicide as a crisis that needs to be addressed. We have agreed among all social partners that we need to take extraordinary and concerted action using every means at our disposal to end this crisis. The collective perspectives perspectives that have been expressed at this summit on all the issues and more will enable governments and decision makers to better understand people's practical lived experiences. They will be able to better understand what works and what doesn't work, and to better understand what must change. Collectively, the members of the G20 represent 85% of global GDP, 75% of global trade, and 2/3 of the global population. For the G20 to fully live up to its mission of promoting international financial stability and deepening economic cooperation, there should be no unwritten rules about those who feast and those who must be settled for scraps. It cannot be that a country's geographical location or income level or army determines who has a voice and who is spoken down to. And it basically means that there should be no bullying of one nation by another nation. We are all equal. In choosing the theme, when we chose the theme that we must advance a vision of meaningful, credible global cooperation, we did not only mean a small club of leaders. We meant the people of the world must be able to be part of that vision. It is our expectation that this social summit will be remembered for being far more than a marketplace of ideas. Just as the Bandung Conference in Indonesia in 1955 elevated the voice of the Global South, and just as the Conference of the People in 1955 here in South Africa harnessed global solidarity against apartheid, one previous speaker from, Oxfam, said that this struggle against apartheid was the biggest struggle that he had ever seen. Now, this summit must be remembered for having given practical meaning to what global solidarity is all about. And thank you to you all who have been part of making this summit a success. We commend the delegates from various civil society organizations that are present here for the shaping of the agenda and direction of G20 Social. And in many ways, for you who are South Africans, it already gives us a very good idea of what our national dialogue will be about and what we hope that it will yield, your participation. These efforts will foster ongoing cooperation between governments and civil society in advancing sustainable global development. For millennia, our forebears were guided by the sun by the day and the stars and the moon by night. They relied on nature to show them the way as they traversed the ancient trading routes of Timbuktu, as they navigated the mighty Congo River and the mighty Nile River, as they made their ways across the vast expanses of the Kalahari and the Sahara Desert. Today, we are counting on this social summit to guide the G20. We are relying on this social summit to be the reliable, trustworthy compass that ensures the G20 agenda takes the needs and the aspirations of all the countries and all the peoples of the world into account. As you heard, we also initiated the drafting of a report on inequality. We got a Nobel laureate, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, to work with other experts to draft for the G20 and indeed for the world, for the very first time, a real composite report on inequality. And we hope that the focus on inequality will now be taken to another level. And we hope that we will be able to set up a global inequality panel that will operate at the same level as the COP 20s and the COP 30s that focus on climate change. Inequality deserves more, if not as equal as what we are treating climate change as. It is our collective wish that this G20 social will guide us along the path of solidarity, of equality and sustainability, no matter the headwinds, no matter the geopolitical shifts, no matter the challenges. We will keep our eyes fixed on the horizon of progress and shared prosperity. We will set a new course for the world, and in many ways the declaration that you are about to present to me today is a declaration that will set a new course for the world, and we will create a new future for the people of the world as it is implemented. And with those words, I thank you and I applaud you and I commend you for participating in this summit. Thank you very much.